So just before we do this year, which as you know has been going for a very long time, we do the week's something from the week's Sidra from the Rebbe's Torah, the Rebbe's learning. But sometimes during the year that Seder is upset because of Yom Tovim. So, for example, this year there's tonight, which is Parshat Tzav, but next weekend already is Shabbos HaGodel, and then after that there's Pesach on the Shabbos. So there's an opportunity to. We have to miss out one of the Sedras, so we can either miss out Tzav, which is next week, or we miss out either Tzav or Shemini. No, I'm sorry. I'm saying this back to front. We can choose to do either Tzav or Shemini, but we don't get to do both because Pesach falls out on one of those. So I thought we'd do a sikha from Shemini, because Shemini means eighth, and just so that you know the background to this, we are at the point of the story where Am Yisrael have received the Torah on Mount Sinai, heard the Ten Commandments. Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to the mountain, comes back down from the mountain with the luchos, with the two tablets, breaks the luchos, goes back up, gets forgiveness, and the first mitzvah that Am Yisrael is given after they're forgiven the sin of the golden calf is that they have to build a mishkan. They have to build a house, a sanctuary, a house for Hashem. And it was a big, very big, glorified tent. If you could, and when I say big, it wasn't big by circus standards. If you to understand how big it was about 45 feet long, about 35 feet wide. That's not big when you consider what has to happen in there. And why it was built was the concept was that the Dira B'Tachtonim, the idea of Hashem having a dwelling place in Gashmias, which is an impossibility because he's infinite. How do you put infinity into limited spaces and times? So that was to be achieved by a revelation of godliness in the Mishkan, in this sanctuary. And I won't spend too much time on it, but it's important to get your mind around the extraordinary reality of that sanctuary. That was a place where God's presence was actually revealed. What does that mean? It means that, I'll give you an example. When the sanctuary lasted a certain period of time, but it had to be converted into a permanent dwelling place, which was the first Beis HaMikdash. The first Beis HaMikdash, the first temple, which was a permanent structure made of stone and wood, and unlike the Mishkan, which is made of skins and cloth, and was a temporary structure that was put down and built up and put together regularly over and over again. Every time they journeyed, they had to fold up the Mishkan and dismantle it. Every time they moved forward, that it had to be put together again. That gave way in due course once Am Yisrael moved into Eretz Yisrael, to Eretz Canaan, as it then was. We built the first permanent house for Hashem, which was the first Beis Hamikdash. And in that first Beis Hamikdash, if you look in Pirkei Avos, you'll see that there's a list of 10 open miracles. Every Jew could walk into the Beis Hamikdash and see for themselves godliness, revealed godliness. 10 miracles, open for everybody to see. So this was the most precious thing in Jewish life, was their relationship with this building, because the building was a place where Hashem revealed himself. And that Mishkan was built, and it's the first mitzvah after the sin of the golden calf, and it was to be inaugurated. There was 8 days of celebration until finally the inauguration, and the inauguration took place on the 1st of Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And Rosh Chodesh Nisan is called Nisan because Nisan is meaning miracles, and it's the month of miracles, and our dating of Am Yisrael starts with that day, that 1st of Nisan. That's the first day of the spiritual year, unlike Tishrei, which is the first day of the Gashmiistic year, of the year of creation, of physicality. But this amazing thing, this amazing center of Jewish culture and learning and life and hope and dreams, and the putting together of our morality and our whole legal system, that took place on the 8th day the inauguration took place on the 8th day, and that was the 1st of Nisan. Now, at that time, we have 2 stars to this story. One is Moshe Rabbeinu, and the other is his brother Aaron HaKohen. Aaron was the Kohen Gadol. Moshe Rabbeinu was the number 1 Rebbe of Am Yisrael. So at that inauguration, we have a quarrel between Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron. I'm going to go through that quarrel with you, but I'm going to go through that quarrel with you only so that it's a flesh and blood understanding of a very key point in Jewish perception. And that key point in Jewish perception applies to you and me exactly the same way 3,500 years later. And getting your head around that is an eye-opener for not only your own life, but for how you view other people. We're going to see what this is, but just let me give you the background. So Aaron HaKohen had 4 sons. 2 of those sons, and they were Kohanim. 2 of those sons brought an offering, a korban, on that day of inauguration, and that korban that they brought was an unauthorized korban. It was the Torah describes it as Eish Zor, you translate that, I suppose, strange fire. They brought strange fire, and for that they died. The 2 sons died. Our holy Jews, there's a whole explanation of why they did it, and the suggestion that they were drunk, but they weren't really drunk on alcohol, they were drunk on godliness. And they had a rotzah without a shuv. We haven't got time to go into that, but they were holy, holy Jews, and they exceeded what we are supposed to be doing begashmis on earth. Begashmis, we are meant to elevate the world. We're not meant to walk into heaven. And that's what they tried to do, and therefore they died. But what happened was that their father, Aaron, was anointed. He was a mourner because he lost his two sons that day. And you're not going to imagine that he didn't adore his sons. So it's a terrible thing for him. But on the other hand, it was the first day of the the first day of the celebration of the Mishkan and the new life for Am Yisrael, which was starting on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So Moshe Rabbeinu comes to him and says, let me explain something else. Korbanos, offerings, which is translated as sacrifices, very bad translation. Korbanos were brought with animals in two ways. There are certain korbanos that I won't go through which is which, sin offerings, etc., that you didn't eat, that the meat was burned on the altar and it had its own aliyah without being eaten, without being elevated by eating. What do I mean elevated? If you eat meat on your Shabbos table, that meat has been has eaten plants. The plants have been grown in the ground by a Jew eating it, making a bracha before and benching afterwards. He has elevated the ground into the vegetation, which has been elevated into the animal, and the animal into a human being, which does Torah and does mitzvah. And that's the way we elevate Gashmias, that in those four stages. Now, that there are some korbanos that are burned and not eaten. And they are basically denying a level of pleasure. But there are some korbanos that have to be eaten by the Kohanim, and they have to enjoy that. They have to enjoy it. The meat, it's a beautiful barbecue, the best fillet, whatever it is, and that's how they lived. There were 22,000 Kohanim at the time of the sanctification of the Mishkan, and those 22,000 men lived on the meat of the korbanos. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu comes to his brother and says, today is the inauguration of the Mishkan, and it's Rosh Chodesh, and even though you've lost your two sons and you're in mourning, you have to eat the meat you have to have the pleasure you have to celebrate the Mishkan and the fact that it's Rosh Chodesh by eating the meat. And so Aaron listens, and when Moshe Rabbeinu comes back, he sees that Aaron's meat's burned, not eaten. And he gets very angry with him. He says, "What are you doing? I told you you have to eat the meat." And Aaron says, "Look, I can't eat the meat." And Moshe says, "What are you talking about? It's a mitzvah from Hashem. I told you have to eat the meat." So Aaron explains like this. He explains, look, for the sanctification I understand that the sanctification of the Mishkan trumps being anointed, being a mourner. And therefore, I understand that you tell me that I have to eat the meat. So for that, I would have had to eat the meat. But today is Rosh Chodesh. The sanctification is finished. And on Rosh Chodesh, we have Musaf. Every month we say the Musaf offering say in that davening, but then they used to bring an extra korban called a korban Musaf. And for Musaf, I don't feel so elevated and so happy, and so I don't see that it applies to Rosh Chodesh. I understand that your repeating of Hashem's demand that we eat was to trump my being a mourner for the sanctification of the Mishkan, but not for Rosh Chodesh. And Moshe says to him, I'm sorry, you're right. I made a mistake. You have to know, when we talk about made a mistake, I'm going to just go off at a quick tangent and explain something to you that is a bit contentious, right? Until our Rebbe, the way, if you talk to a Lubavitcher today, a learned, deep, decent Lubavitcher, not some crazy Meshuggah in Israel, right? I'm talking about solid, learned, deep thinking people. You talk to somebody and they do not accept that the Rebbe could have made a mistake. Somebody once asked the Rebbe why he had a rubber on the end of his pencil. Have I told you this?
Yeah.
Why did he have a rubber on the thing? You only have a rubber to rub something out, meaning he made a mistake. But if a Rebbe is a Rebbe, he doesn't make a mistake. So somebody is reported to have asked the Rebbe why he has a rubber on the end of his pencil. I don't know if he ever did. I don't know whether this is a story. These stories grow hair. But apparently the Rebbe answered that it's not for mistakes, that when he wrote what he needed to rub out, he was at one level, and by the time he got to rub it out, he was at a different level, so that level didn't apply anymore. Not that it was wrong, but it didn't apply anymore, that level. When the Rebbe became Rebbe, and he became Rebbe 1 year after the death of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the first sikhs, if you go through the first sikhs, they're all reported in Torah Menachem now, that every sikher and every Farbrengen, the Rebbe hammers over and over and over again that if the Frierdiker Rebbe said something, then that was it. There's no questions, nothing. And people followed that slavishly with the Rebbe, to the point that I know I went once for the Gevirim Yechidus to the Rebbe, and I was standing in the waiting area with my wife and one of our children, and somebody came out from his few moments with the Rebbe, and he was in real estate. And the Rebbe said something about digging for gold. And this guy, I mean, you can do things. You can say, what does the Rebbe mean? Did he make a mistake? He came back to Australia and immediately stopped all his real estate activities and started mining in Western Australia, made a fortune. So when the Rebbe said something, we were educated. In our generation, we were educated to understand that was sacrosanct. It couldn't be wrong. There was nothing. Now that is the first time in history in Chabad that reality took place. If you knew Rabbi Feldman's father, Oliver Sholem, who I knew quite well, I had a lot to do with him. I drove him around for a period of time, and he told me a lot of things. And he repeated to me something which is well known, that the Frierdiker Rebbe predicted the coming of Mashiach in 1940, in one of the 1940s, middle 1940, 48, approximately 1948, when Israel was and he said that Mashiach was coming, and the year 1948 came and went, and there was no Mashiach. And someone asked the Frierdiker Rebbe, what happened? There's no Mashiach. And you said Mashiach was coming. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, I made a mistake. And he didn't only say he made a mistake, he said, I had it from a Mocha Ne'emon. What's that mean? The Mocha Ne'emon, a faithful source, right? A reliable source. in Shemayim. He had it from a reliable source in Shemayim, and still Hashem's the boss. It didn't happen. So was that a mistake? Maybe it was a mistake, maybe it wasn't. But when Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, that is big Hiddish for in Chabad, because that can't be. Moshe Rabbeinu was the Lubavitcher Rebbe of the generation, and the way we learn, if a Rebbe says something, it's emes. Emes is spelled Aleph Mem Tov. That's the first, the middle, and the last letter in the Hebrew language. It means that truth is always true. We're going to see about that in a minute. So the first point in this story that we've just heard in this exchange is that Moshe Rabbeinu is saying something to Aaron. Aaron doesn't listen to him and argues with Moshe Rabbeinu and explains why he doesn't listen to him, because it's Rosh Chodesh, it's not the sanctification of the Mishkan anymore, so therefore he feels he can't take pleasure in it. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I made a mistake. You're right. So what this exchange is about at its deeper level, at your and my experience, your and my life, is the question of what is truth. What is truth? And what is peace? Are truth and peace synonymous? Do they mean the same thing? And you may be surprised to know that truth and peace are often opposites. Not only don't they mean the same thing, but they're often opposites. I'll give you an example. Shimon and Chaim come to a Beis Din they have an argument. They're both sincere. Shimon thinks ABC and Yankel thinks XYZ. And they both put their cases. And there are two ways that the court can proceed. You should know this, very important in halakha. One is by way of what's called a pshara, where the judge suggests a compromise. You say he owes you $1,000. You say you owe him nothing. How about we settle it for $500? Right? That's a compromise. So that's the first thing. Or you can have the truth. The truth will be that one owes the $1,000, or the truth will be that he doesn't owe that. And it's black and white. He either does or he doesn't. So what's the point of sharing? If you're interested in the truth, you can't share 500 and 500 because that's not the truth. That's peace. That's a compromise. Let's just keep the language accurate. What's peace? Peace is where it says that Aaron HaKohen, Oyev Shalom and Roidev Shalom. It means that he loved peace and ran after peace. So what he used to do was the Midrash says he'd go to a husband, or he'd go to a Jew, and who he knew was fighting with another Jew, and he'd say to the first Jew, Chaim Yankel that you're fighting with really regrets this, and he really wants to make up with you in his heart. And then he goes to Chaim Yankel and he says that Shimon really regrets this. He really wants to make up with you. And slowly but surely, when I started to be from, this is 55 years ago, there was a rabbi in Coogee called Rabbi Tapuchi. And when I started to learn, Rabbi Philman was my first teacher, And he said, and I said, look, I'd like to learn Hebrew because there was no materials in English. You wouldn't believe it today, the libraries of Torah in English, but then you couldn't get anything in English. So I thought I had to learn Hebrew. So he gave me this Rabbi Tapuki as a teacher, and he used to come to my house and he used to teach me Aleph Beis, right? The sweetest man you can possibly imagine. So he used to come to the house, and then he used to come to, and I didn't know anything about this with Aaron Cohen. And he always used to leave saying, you know, your wife, she's a marvelous woman. Do you understand who you're married to? She's so beautiful, and she's so nice, and she's so kind, and she always offers me a cup of tea, and she's always this and this and this. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, he's right. I mean, she really is pretty special. And then I found out a couple of years later that he used to go to her and say, what a husband you've got. You have a husband. This guy wants to learn Aleph Beis and at his age and sang my praises to her. And she thought, you know what, there's something in it. So this is...
He made your marriage stronger.
Yeah, no question about it. No question that he made it stronger. So you have the process of bringing peace, shalom bayis, relationship between one person and another. You have the concept of truth or false or lies, and you have the concept of compromise, and they all seem to mix into one another. And we learn that the more it's mixed into one another in your mind, in your heart, in your soul, the more confused you are. And the better you understand the distinctions and the boundaries, the easier your life is and the more you grow. So this is the thrust of the Sikha that we're learning. So let's do this. Truth, you have to ask yourself a question. Is truth relative? You know, if we say that truth is MS and it's Aleph, first letter, middle letter, end letter, you have to believe that truth is truth. Either it's true or it's not true. It's black and white. It happened or it didn't happen. It is true or it isn't true. And if that's the case, it's always true. For example, Torah. Torah is true. It's always true, without any exception whatsoever. Torah is true. Now, what about, you're a movie buff. Do you remember there was a Japanese movie called Rashomon?
Yeah, of course.
You know that too?
I know very well.
Okay.
From three different points of view.
So the story was very simple. There was a samurai officer walking with a donkey and his new bride, or a horse and I think it was a donkey and his new bride. And they meet a bandit in the forest. Yeah. And the bandit violates the wife.
And he kills her.
And he dies. I don't know about killed, but it depends which story you believe. And then you get the story told from three different perspectives, and completely different, right? Kurosawa, that's right. One story was that when the husband told the story, he was a hero, and the other guy was a cheat, challenged him to a duel, and he cheated. And because he cheated, he won because he couldn't win against an officer. And he won, and he violated his poor wife. Yeah. And then you heard the one from the bandit, and the one from the bandit was that the samurai officer was a weak, spoiled man, and the wife was sexually hungry and tried to seduce him. And it was when she succeeded, then the cowardly officer attacked him, right? But each one had a different
point of view,
and the stories had almost nothing to do with each other, other than the fact of who the three people were and the fact that she had intercourse with one of them and one of them died. Now, the point of that movie was supposed to show you and me that truth is relative depending on who sees it. That is not what we believe. We do not believe that is an acceptable perspective whatsoever, because you could then say, and I'll come back to this example over and over again, there's a mitzvah to put on film, but who says I've got to put on film? Or how do I know that it's for me? Or it's a hot day, or whatever it is, I will present my own argument why it's not necessary. That is the road to misery, because it is making a truth into a falsehood.
Excuse.
Huh?
Excuse.
So, but on the other hand, we do learn that truth is relative, but not relative like in Rashomon, like in that story. I'll give you an example where truth is relative. Let's say that let's go back to the film example. Let's say that there is a guy, and doesn't have to be at this table or listening on the tape, but there's a guy who decides that he wants to become frum. And he's very sincere, and he finds a teacher, and the teacher tells him that he needs to put on film. So he said, what's film? So he explains to him what film is. When do you put on film? Every day except Shabbos and Yom. He says, okay. Where do I do that? He says, in shul. And what do I do when I put on the film? You pray. What do I pray? You say Shema. What's Shema? So the teacher teaches him how to put on the film and how to say Shema. And this guy goes to shul and spends a quarter of an hour in intense effort to put on film and to say Shema. He's breaking his teeth saying the Shema, but he learns how to translate it, and he sincerely spends that quarter of an hour in a relationship with his God, in a real relationship with his God, right? Would you say he's serving God? You'd say yes. Now you take a film guy. He's been putting on film all his life, goes to shul every day, meets all his friends. How are you? Where are you going tonight? And he puts on film every day, and he davens not for just the Shema for 15 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes. He davens a full hour every day. But it's Ashrei Yoshvei Besek, and it means nothing much, except that he gets it's like a Korban Tomid. It's every day. It's got a regularity to it. So it's certainly a tick on his spiritual report card. But would you say that his service was better than the other guy because he's davening for an hour and putting on film, which he knows how to do backwards? Or would you say the other guy who can't do any of those things, but who's doing it for 15 minutes with such effort and such sincerity, whose is better?
Both of them.
That's what you have. That's what this Sikha is about. It has to be to understand that for each person, it's the same truth, but at a different level. But both of them are serving God. Both of them are. The guy who goes to shul, it's not convenient to go to shul for an hour every morning, and to put on film every day, and sometimes to miss breakfast or whatever it is. It's not. That's how he starts his day. That's his commitment to his God, and to that extent, his service to God is true. It's a true service. He means it. It's sincere. Nobody's forcing him. He's doing it because he believes that he should. So for him, that is true. And that truth of putting on tefillin and davening lasts an hour and a quarter or an hour. And that's his truth. Now, the other guy, his truth is 15 minutes, but it's the same truth. It's just at a different level. And we learn in Perek 13 of Tanya this very point where the Alter Rebbe is explaining the difference between a tzaddik and a Beinoni, that a tzaddik is on fire with love for God all day, not just when he's davening, not just when he's doing a mitzvah, not just when he's helping somebody, but all the time. And a Beinoni is a person who does nothing wrong, but is attacked by his Yetzer Hara at every possible opportunity. Every pretty girl that walks past him, every skirt that blows up in the wind, every opportunity to steal money, but he doesn't. But he has the desire to do it. He has a Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is on fire. For some people, they need to boast. For some people, they need power. And the definition of a Beinoni is that he has this struggle all his life, and he doesn't give in to it. And for him, his truth is that he doesn't give in to it. So therefore, he is at the holy level that he is. A tzaddik doesn't have a Yetzer Hara, or he's got rid of it. Huh?
Nothing.
A tzaddik, a real tzaddik, none. I'll give you an example to understand it. If you're hungry, right, you're really hungry, you haven't eaten food, you're a prisoner, and you're really hungry, and they bring you into this dining room and sit you at that chair and put in front of you a bowl of steaming vomit. Steaming vomit. Would you eat it? No. Why? It's disgusting. You don't have a desire to eat it because it's disgusting. A Beinoni, you bring him in some chocolate cake, and he's been on a diet for 3 months, and he's going to have to, if he wants to continue the diet, he's going to fight that Yetzer Hara very hard. And it's a very big struggle for him not to eat. The tzaddik, when he had the vomit, there was no struggle for him. He hated it. So when a tzaddik sees something which is contrary to Ratzon Hashem, that's something that's contrary to the will of Hashem, he's disgusted by it. There's no temptation. What temptation is there to eat vomit? So, and a real tzaddik, a proper tzaddik, and there are lamed vav of them, you know, in every generation. We haven't got time for that, but 36 tzaddikim in every generation. They know who each other are, by the way. It's a whole secret society. But the tzaddik has no Yetzer Hara. Now, there are two kinds of tzaddikim. There are those that are born like that. That's very, very rare. And there are those who achieve that through work, through diligent effort. But they achieve it so that when they get to the point where doing something contrary to the will of Hashem has no value, none. Now that isn't the pathology of a Beinoni. The pathology of a Beinoni is he is a super saint. Why? Because he lives his 30, 50, 120 years on this planet and doesn't do wrong. Does he want to do wrong? He doesn't want to do wrong, but is he tempted to do wrong? Yes. The chocolate cake looks fantastic. The smell of the treif food, McDonald's hamburger, smells terrific. For a tzaddik, it's disgusting because he knows that it's not kosher, and that's enough for him. The ordinary person who can alavai be a Beinoni, by the way, you can be a Beinoni for 5 minutes. You can be a Beinoni, you fail, you do tshuva. Once you've done tshuva, you're a Beinoni again. Not if you plan to do the Vayikra and then to do the tshuva. Okay, so, but okay. When Aaron was an oinen and he was told that he had to eat, that he couldn't eat because it was the inauguration of the sanctuary, and that was such a joyful thing that you couldn't mourn. And there are halachas when you can't mourn. I'll give you an example. You're not allowed to mourn on Shabbos. Did you know that? You have a relative die, God forbid, and you go to, and you bury the relative, God forbid, and you sit shiva.
Don't sit Shiva.
Huh?
Don't sit Shiva on Shabbos.
Comes Shabbos, you have to get up, and you're not allowed to. Nobody's allowed to see that you're mourning. You can't sit there and cry on Shabbos. It's forbidden. So, I mean, we saw it in 1986 when the Rebbetzin, I can't remember what year it was. I think it was 86 when the Rebbetzin died, and the Rebbe Fabring Shabbos. You didn't see that he was mourning, and they had a wonderful marriage. He was devastated when she died. You have to understand, this is a man who was waiting for Mashiach every moment, and he was going to greet Mashiach with his wife, and she died. That Shabbos, you didn't see him mourning. So when Aaron a Kohen, it says, okay, so I understand that for the Mishkan, but not for Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh we do every month, and it doesn't trump Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, I couldn't eat. So what is the truth? The truth is that, and I want to, before we go to that truth, I want to explain a very important thing. Don't think what I'm about to tell you allows you to think that Moshe Rabbeinu is entitled, that a Jew is entitled to break halakha because he wants to. When Aaron says to Moshe, I can't do this, I can't, because it's only Rosh Chodesh, no longer is it the sanctification of the Mishkan. He is not saying, God told me wrong, God told you wrong. Moshe Rabbeinu repeated exactly what Hashem told him. He said to him that if someone is anointed during the period of the celebration of the Mishkan, he has to celebrate. He can't fast. He can't not eat the korban. It's just, and when Moshe told him that, he was telling him exactly the truth. What was Aaron saying? He was saying, but you're not interpreting it correctly, because you're extrapolating what I've got to do with the celebration of the Mishkan to Rosh Chodesh, and Rosh Chodesh isn't big enough to trump that. So that's why Torah is full of statements of the Mishnah or of a rabbi. You're all right, Ronnie. You want something to drink?
I was sick.
Oh. So it's not that he was wrong. He was interpreting what Hashem said and extrapolating it to Rosh Chodesh, and there's nothing in there that allows him to do that. That's why he said, I'm sorry, I was wrong. So when he doesn't sound well.
Cool.
Huh? Cool. He'll be all right, huh? Okay, so L'chaim. So let's talk about Shalom for a minute, which is an opposite to MS. It's an opposite to truth. An opposite, not even consistent with it. I'll give you an example. When I was at law school 100 years ago, there was a judge He wasn't a judge yet, he was a QC. His name was, give me a moment, I'll think of it, Street. His name was Street, QC, very famous lawyer. And he used to lecture us in bankruptcy the very famous QCs in those days lectured a little bit in law school to give something back. He then became a judge, like his father was a judge and his grandfather was a judge, and he finally became Chief Justice of the Court of Appeal of New South Wales. He was a handsome, dashing, incredibly intelligent, charming man. When he reached retirement age, and there's a compulsory retirement age in the Court of Appeal, he was put out to graze. He was bored. So he took a job as a mediator. Right? You know what a mediator is? It's like a judge by agreement. So people have a quarrel and they go to a mediation and they sign an agreement that whatever the mediator decrees is the... But the whole idea of mediation isn't like court. Court is a pursuit of the truth. Did he do it? Didn't he do it? Does he owe the money? Doesn't he owe the money? A court doesn't have the power to say, look, you know what, he owes the money, but he's poor. Or there's some doubt, so we'll divide it a bit, we'll compromise it a bit. A court can't do that. A court has to find the truth. But mediation doesn't work like that. And I'll never forget the first mediation I had was with this man Street, who was my lecturer a few years earlier when I was a student. And he comes into the room and he says, ladies and gentlemen, I need to make a little bit of a speech before we start. He said, for me to do my job well, for me to be a success, you've all got to be very disappointed. But you've all got to be disappointed about the same amount, because each side thinks that they're in the right. But if the mediation is to be successful, and they don't have to accept it, if they don't want to accept it, they can go to a court case instead. But if the mediation is to be successful, you're going to have to go home with less than the 100% that you think you're entitled to. And if I'm going to be successful, it's my job to explain to you why it's worth it to you to accept that. Now that's a compromise. A compromise is where you take this truth, and there's no denying or proving that truth. You're just swapping one truth against another, and both sides are not getting the real deal. But that's not what, that's real truth is black and white. Yes, you're guilty. No, you're not. Yes, you owe the money. No, you don't. Peace is not compromise, because compromise, you go home annoyed. You didn't get what you really wanted. Okay, you've settled it. The fight is over, but you've compromised. You've given away stuff that you really believe you shouldn't. But a person who can settle a dispute so that the parties have peace means that they've accepted that they are happy with their position. That's what real achievement of peace is. Not that one is begrudgingly forced into submission. That's not peace. That's defeat. Peace is where it's not a compromise, because you're not giving away something that you believe is still yours, but where you have allowed that truth is different at different levels, that your truth and his truth can coexist. Not only coexist, definitely do coexist. So if one guy who davens for an hour every day and puts on film every day of his life is standing next to the guy in shul who says Shema for 5 minutes and puts on film every third day, but he's doing it as intensely as he possibly can, both of those two people are living truth, but truth at different levels. And what the Rebbe is explaining in this argument between Aaron and Moshe Rabbeinu is that Moshe Rabbeinu is delivering an absolute truth, and Aaron is saying there's no such thing. Everybody's at a different position. Everybody was born on a different day with different parents, with different realities, with a different life, with different tests, with different obstacles. And for each person, they can be sincerely serving God 100%, but differently. Because truth, although it is absolute in one way, it's relative in another way. Not relative like Rosh Hashanah, where everyone has a different story, but the focus and the deliberateness and the level is different for every person. Why is this so important to us personally? Because the reality is that we spend our 60, 70, 120 years in this life, the neshama in this guf, and you've got to deal with thousands and thousands of people over your lifetime. And we don't keep clear in our mind that his truth and your truth, although they are totally apparently different, can coexist, not only coexist, but be true. That your truth is true, and his truth is true for him, and your truth is true for you. My truth is true. Now, does that mean that I got to call it true when I'm lying? If I'm lying to myself, I'm lying to myself and saying, you know what, I made a decision not to eat that chocolate cake, but now it's in front of me. I'm going to eat it, and it won't do me any harm. That's a lie. Nobody's asking you to be an idiot and call a lie a truth, but if you see something one way and I see something another way, it may be that your background, your family, and the way you were brought up and the tests that Hashem gives you are sufficiently different to the way I was brought up and the tests that I've been given by Hashem, that I don't understand your point of view and you don't understand my point of view, but they can both be true. They're just different levels for different people. And if one can appreciate that, there's a whole different dimension to Avos Yisrael. Because when we dislike somebody in terms of we haven't got time to do Avos Yisrael now, but I'm just very quickly, when you dislike somebody else, it's because his position is foreign to you. But it's open to us to make his position familiar to us. Why? Because everybody has a different level of a truth. And providing he's telling the truth, there has to be a way of understanding that. And that's shalom. That's real shalom. Not compromise, because you're not allowing a lie and saying, I'm compromising this lie against that lie. You are requiring your truth to be valuable and his truth to be valuable and to subscribe to his truth and your truth. And they're not a contradiction. So l'chaim.
Говорила, водички дали?
Wouldn't you think that Aaron and Moshe would be a bit more lenient or have a bit more mercy on Aaron